Hello, welcome to the Healthy Enterprise. Thank you for joining me for this episode. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you're back for more, I really appreciate you returning. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'm speaking with Mary Hames, and Mary is the CEO and founder of BioLogic Pharma Solutions. She has a background in science, but discovered an entrepreneurial itch along the way and decided to launch her own consultancy firm. Her and her team are dedicated to helping biotech and pharmaceutical companies prepare for commercialization in a more agile and low-risk manner. So I'm sure you'd like to hear more, as do I. So let's get started and welcome Mary to the show. Hi, Mary. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to hearing your story and hearing about BioLogic and how you got to where you are. So maybe start by introducing yourself and explaining who you are and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Heath. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Mary Hames, CEO and founder of BioLogic Pharma Solutions. We are a biotech and pharmaceutical consulting firm. So we support biotech and pharma clients that are launching new products or going through a period of flux. Honestly, it seems like everybody's going through a period of flux right now.
Who's not in flux?
We have a bit of a niche in rare disease, neurology, and radiopharm. So that's what we mostly gravitate towards. But we're just helping companies that need help getting to that commercialization stage.
Right. So, and I was reading about you a little bit. It's kind of like in a sense, fractional. I think you even use that word on your website. So you're kind of filling a space where there's not necessarily the affordability of all that expertise to be on staff or on board or whatever. So you're filling that gap until they get to a stage where they actually can fill those positions at a full-time basis. So that's probably extremely helpful, especially in the early stages.
That's right. For younger companies, it's particularly attractive. So smaller companies, maybe they don't have a commercially approved product yet. It's very risky to build out a full medical team prior to knowing your data and knowing how successful commercialization is going to be. And despite that, companies really need it. So some of the work that we do includes preparing the market, talking to physicians and clinicians, making sure that folks are aware of this new therapeutic, how it works, what clinical trials are available. And that's important work to be done prior to commercialization. But if you're in a situation where you're not sure if the FDA is going to approve your drug, or you're not sure you're going to make it to the next phase, or you're not sure what's going to happen, it can be very risky to hire a bunch of people to do all that work. So, hiring and firing is very difficult these days. And so if you hire a bunch of people and then you have to let them go, it's hard. It's hard on the people. It's hard on the company. It's very expensive. And so one of the things that we do with this fractional concept is we give people basically a full team, but just pieces of the team. And for these smaller companies, it works out really well because they can get some amount of the field support that they need, some amount of the strategy. They don't have to hire 6 or 7 different people. They can use our fractional team, and then they get a little bit of each of those things that they need. And some of what people really like about that is that it can shift over time. So we're working with a client that's in that situation where they're small and they're growing and they're approaching phase 3, and their needs shift pretty often. Quarter by quarter, right. There's big changes in the initiatives. So, part of the year, maybe they'll get a whole lot of support on medical communications, publications, responding to requests for medical information. And then once their trial gets up and running, they need a lot more help with engaging with their clinical trial sites, trial site identification of sites, communication with referral sites. There's very different work. And so they really need different people to do that. The person that's in the field isn't always the best writer and vice versa. Right. So it's nice for them because they can shift. what we're also finding is now, we started with this model of younger, smaller pharma companies. But what we're finding, as I mentioned, everybody's in flux. Larger companies find this model very attractive as well because we can fill gaps. So a company that has vacancies, they may want to use us for some period of time until they get shifted to where they want to be.
Right.
Or we've had companies that, maybe they're considering a merger or a sale of a product and they don't want to hire any new people because chances are those people aren't going to be around. So
Right.
they can hire us in these transition times because we're able to move in and out easily.
Yeah,
So
you're really savvy, right? Yeah.
our contract is such that, they don't have to give us tremendous notice. It's just, okay, we don't need you anymore. Bye.
Yeah. No hard feelings.
Yeah, no hard feelings. And we expect that, we expect that we're going to be short term or as needed. And so it's easy for everybody when that's the right time, So we worked with a company this past year and they were expecting pivotal top line data and they really didn't know whether the data were going to be positive or negative.
Right.
And so they brought us on and said, we'll plan for 6 months. If the data are positive, we're going to push forward. We have all these things to do. You can help us bring on our full-time team. If the data are negative, you'll help us shut down the program and you'll walk away. Wow. And so that was a great solution for all of us. So I think, with the uncertain nature of seemingly everyone now, I think people are really keying in on this concept and seeing the advantage.
It must be interesting, and you, like you said, you're explaining that you either shut it down or you help them move forward. It must be, depending on how long you're there, you must become part of the family in a sense, where you're actually doing the work, helping them get to where they go. So it would be, if you had to shut down, you share in their disappointment too, or their, it must be interesting.
It really is. We do develop good relationships with the company, but I think working in pharma, the most difficult thing when you have to shut a program down is the patients. So, right. Patients get so excited about these therapeutics and they're so hopeful and optimistic. And, when you have to shut a program down, there are sorely disappointed patients and families.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the hardest part, is you want to do that carefully and, and share the data and share why it's not a viable drug candidate anymore. But, with our companies, at least we can always work with them again, call it back when your next program is ready for this stage. So that's been nice.
So what got you to this? Like what day, you woke up one day and went, I'm going to start this company. Was it a sort of a series of events that led you to this place, or what motivated you to do that?
Yeah, it's sort of a broad question. I think those of us that have an entrepreneurial itch sort of have it forever. There's always a little piece in the back of your head, I could do that, or maybe I could do this. And for me, I've always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial lean, and I got an executive MBA from Kennesaw State, and that program was really a great push to help me feel prepared to lead a company. And so, during that time, we were writing a business plan as a team, and I had this business idea, and my team helped me develop it out, and I started that company, and that company failed. Bad timing. Maybe I have all these thoughts. Maybe if I had done this differently, maybe if I had stuck with it a little longer. I started the company just a couple of months prior to COVID, so that was really tricky.
Timing.
But I still wanted to do it. I still wanted to do my own thing. So, I've been in pharma for quite a long time, and I've seen a lot of different companies do things very differently. But one of the things that I have seen a number of times is just that scramble towards commercialization of a new drug. And it's very common that in this flux, things are done very inefficiently.
Hmm.
And so, you know, I knew I wanted to start my own company, wanted to lean on my skills and things I knew how to do. And I like change, and I think that fits nicely again with the fractional medicals. I can work on different projects at once.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but I like I like moving on to different things and growing something and building something. So for me, that growing phase of preparation for some event, top line readout, commercialization, once things are running smoothly, I tend to get bored.
Right.
I want the next challenge and the next project.
I
So
can relate to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, this just worked out as a way to continue to have new projects that were fun and exciting and challenging, and not having to quit my job and get a new job, with every drug approval cycle. So
Right.
it's for me, it's a nice marriage of interest and background and skills with this entrepreneurial lean.
Right.
For me, the other thing about having my own company is doing things the way I want to do them. So I care a lot about the culture of the company and how people feel and how people are taken care of and flexibility that people have. And so, over the years, I've always put those things in my pocket. When you have experiences at companies, well, one day I'm going to do it this way.
Right.
And so I like doing that. And honestly, for me, that's one of the things that keeps pushing me to stay motivated, is thinking about all the cool things that I want to do for the team, with the team, as we grow. So that's also a nice rewarding motivation for me for pursuing the business.
Yeah, it sounds like that's kind of you're kind of intertwining that in with your values, that's how you're going to lead this company. And earlier we kind of uncomfortably giggled about the fact that your first company didn't survive, and I mean, anybody else who's experienced that would uncomfortably giggle the same way. It's not anything to laugh about at the time, but it is certainly an experience that you don't forget, and it's something that we learn from. And I think that's the important part, is understanding what we take away from that. But it sounds like you've sort of infused a real sort of sense of uh, a real vision for where you want your company to go, which is really important in leading a group. So when you talk about exciting things you look forward to, what kind of things have you got in the works? Like, what are you thinking about when you think about, oh, I can't wait to get our team to this point? Like, where are you wanting them to get to?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, medical affairs consulting is complex. There are a lot of firms doing this. There are a lot of people in medical affairs consulting, and I think a lot of people aren't doing it well. I've working in pharma, directly for a pharmaceutical company in the past. I've hired consultants, and I've had a mixed bag. I've
Right.
also hired full-time employees and had great and not so great experiences.
Sure.
But I think that what I look forward to is I truly believe that with fractional medical that we can shift the dynamic of biotech and pharma launches, because I honestly think it makes so much more sense to have a contract team during these periods than hiring FTEs. Years ago, pharma companies had their own clinical operations entirely. And then, at the conclusion of the clinical trials, everybody got fired. And it was
Right.
just how it was done. And then folks figured out, well, we can have a clinical research organization or CRO come do the study, and we just retain them for that, and then they leave, and then we don't have to worry about all this hiring and firing. And now almost no one has their own clinical research. Virtually everyone uses these CROs. And so
Right.
I really see fractional medical taking over medical affairs prior to commercial, and then potentially some after, when there are these periods of flux or change. So that's my big, hairy, audacious goal is taking over all of pre-commercial medical. in addition to that, we've got other therapeutic areas, more of a smaller medium term goals. We've got some other therapeutic areas we'd like to pull in. We've done a lot in rare neurology and radiopharm, but we want to expand into other therapeutic areas. So we've got a lot on the horizon.
Yeah, sounds like it. What do you see on a daily basis? Where are your challenges, both as a business owner and leader, and also from for your company? Where do you guys find the challenges in this environment?
Yeah, I think with consulting, I talked to a lot of consultants before starting a consulting firm, about the pros and cons. And, there are a lot of folks out there that are just independent consultants. And so they just by themselves do the work. And a lot of those folks told me, consulting work is is great. It's flexible. You get paid well. Um, it's lonely, and there's a lot of feast or famine. You're either drowning in work or you have nothing.
Right.
And so, my hope with this team dynamic of having this fractional team and multiple projects at once. So my goal is that over time we'll minimize that. We'll have, because we have multiple projects, we're diversifying the risk of projects coming in and out. So we'll have less feast or famine. And because we have each other, there won't be that loneliness. As a sole consultant working for a company, you're often an outsider.
Yeah.
You're not really part of the team, and so that's sometimes uncomfortable. So at least we have each other. So when we work with a company, um, you know, like you said, we talked earlier about how you develop relationships with that company.
Right.
So we have relationships with each other as well.
Yeah.
So across different companies, we still have at least our team that's consistent. But I think even with these things that I'm trying to do to mitigate those, there is still a bit of that stair step of growth. You have to have a certain threshold of people to get a certain level of project,
Right.
and then getting to that next phase, you have to have a certain amount of work to get to that next stage. And so, I think one of the challenges for us right now is that balance of having the right amount of people to get the next project without stretching ourselves too thin,
Right.
and not having too many people for not enough work during that stair step. So for us, the growth has not been a pretty linear. It's more violent stair steps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's because you're like you said, it's a you don't know. In some cases, it's feast or famine in the sense that you can only have so many clients on the go, right? Because capacity is always a concern. It's a big concern in a lot of companies, but particularly when you're a little bit smaller, a little bit more, you can't have 50 projects on the roll at the same time, right? And I think, like you said, diversity is important. You've kind of managed to, uh, some areas of the industry will not be doing so well, and if you've got your eggs in a few different baskets, then you kind of got a little bit of security there. But yeah, how do you see overcoming that? Is it growth? Is it like being bigger and having a little bit more of a bigger client base going on at any given moment, or
I think so. I think my hope is that is the solution, to just continue to get bigger so that we continue to have more diversity. And I believe that with more diversity will come more stability and more predictability. But I don't really know that. I assume that it is, but we'll see.
that's
You
the
know,
exciting part.
yeah, yeah,
That's what keeps you in there, Mary, is
that's
that.
right. That's right. Honestly, sometimes I really do feel like, it's just time to get popcorn, and I can't wait to see how this turns out. So it is exciting, and I try to remind myself of that during these times that are scary, it is as exciting as it is scary.
Hmm.
But in the moment, it can just feel scary. And so I think that's a lot of of the feeling of the sentiment when you're in this seat in these situations, is
Hmm.
it's fear. And so you had asked earlier, thinking about others that are in this same space. I would recommend trying to recognize that fear and recognize that it may not just be fear. It may be excitement, and it can be reframed as excitement.
Right.
So
Yeah, you can shift that energy from more of a retreat. Well, that fight or flight, it's like you want to fight. If you can run away, or you can just dig in and fight through it.
yeah,
And so it's, yeah, you're right. It's about picking which direction you want to take. So, but entrepreneurialism is not for the faint of heart. I mean, you gotta go at it with a bit of courage and a bit of like, being curious about the unknown. What's ahead.
yes, yeah. I think you need a healthy risk tolerance, and
Yeah.
and I think it helps to be somewhat competitive. To want to win, to get to that next stage. Can we make it here? Can we make it here? Achieving milestones and goals that you set is super fun.
That must help your clients, because you kind of walk their shoe you walk in their shoes too, in the sense that they're entrepreneurs as well, right? They're startups, and they're fueling a dream, and they have goals, and you're there to support them, and you understand their fears and their trepidations, and what the potential outcomes could be, failure or success. So you probably are able to kind of, even guide them that way, do you think?
I think so. It's not uncommon for the smaller companies to have, their founder is can be the scientist that developed the cells that are being used, and so that's a very unique position because they certainly haven't brought a drug to market. They've
Right.
been a scientist their entire careers, and they've developed this really amazing and wonderful thing, and it is their baby.
Yeah.
And so it can be it can be very tempting when you're in that situation to want to touch every single part of everything, which
Right.
is a mistake. But it's easy to want to do that because it is your baby.
Yeah.
So some of the advice that we do give to those folks is take people that are good and that you trust and let them do that work. You do this part. We will take care of this part. We will work on this together. We love it too. You know, um, but yes, we do help our companies in that way, and I think it can be easier for us to help companies that are in flux, because we have less risk because of it. So
Right.
when you're a full-time employee at a company that may not survive, or that product may not be around next year, sometimes your motivations are a little different.
Well, you got one foot out the door all the time.
Yeah. And so for us, because we're prepared either way, we're able to come at it from a less stressed perspective
Yeah.
of, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and it's going to be fine. We don't have to have that additional weight of, well, if this doesn't get approved, now I don't have a job.
Right.
It's more, if this doesn't get approved, we're going to do this and this and this and shut it down and move on.
Right.
So I think that helps
Yeah.
our companies. Um, it's a heavy weight when you know that you have people on your team that are counting on you to support their families,
Hmm.
and that additional weight of letting a bunch of people go is hard. So I think that working with a company like us is easier because we don't have that additional burden.
Right. Exactly. I think you brought up a good point too. That whole trust thing. Entrepreneurs are, notoriously famous for not allowing or giving out enough trust to allow them to focus on things. Like you said, the scientist needs to stay the scientist, and can't be the CFO and the
Yeah.
CMO and the COO. You got to the founder or the scientist has to keep focused on what got that company to where it is right now in the first place. But you find that in every industry, almost every company, that same sort of like, this is my baby, I can't let go, I've got to be involved in every decision that's made. But it's not actually true. That's really kind of,
Yeah.
that's a crippling approach.
I think it is. And honestly, I don't think it's smart for the longevity of your company either. Um, you know, you've got to have your mind on the next stages, and even if you're early on, how am I going to exit this? I've got some friends that are running companies as well, and one of the things that we talk about sometimes is, particularly in these roles, consulting, where you have clients that brought you on because they want to work with you,
Right.
but that's not sustainable. So it's really important to identify those people that are on your team that can do that work as well, transition that work to them, trust them to do it, so that you can go catch fish and strategize and think about what are those next stages. So
Right.
that's one really lovely thing that we've been able to reach this year. Is I'm in a place now where I'm doing less of the actual work.
Right.
So we have clients now that are entirely handled by the team, and I get these lovely updates, and I'm sort of arm's length away. And I really think that that's long term. I would like for all the clients to be that way, but it can be a tough transition if you have people that you know so well and they really want you. But I do think for the longevity of the company, you've got to do that.
Right.
You've got to delegate and feel good about it. They're not going to do it. They may not do it to your best,
Right.
but it's probably
And
good.
it's a transition phase, right? I mean, for you doing it too, I'm sure there's aspects that where maybe you kind of miss a little bit of the frontline work as well. But that's a transition phase where you move from that role to being the lead, and you take on different aspects of the business. So but I think every business owner always thinks that too. It's like, well, I miss that, being in the trenches and being part of it. But
Yeah.
you actually become a part where you actually can, your experience makes you more of a mentor, and that has a lot of value too. So learning to make that shift, and opening, I think also too, opening the doors to other perspectives and different approaches. And
Yeah.
because as time moves on, things shift all over the place. So allowing a
Yeah.
little bit more fluidity with other ideas is also good too. In your world, you're basically helping a business evolve and move through various stages. Um, how do you find clients? So I mean, you have to market your business just like every other company, and then usually those companies that you're also working with always have to end up going to market at some point. And do you make it to that stage a lot? So there's two questions: how do you find clients, and then how do you help your clients market their products?
Yeah. So good questions. So personally, and several of us on the team working for pharma have taken products fully through clinical trials to launch. Since at BioLogic, we have not yet brought a product fully to launch.
Oh,
I don't. We probably will, but so far we haven't. We've been entirely in that pre-commercial space. We have spoken with several clients, and we've got one coming on that have commercially approved products, but not. We haven't actually been, as a company. We haven't crossed that threshold. So, um, so to answer your question, we haven't done that yet. And then
but you got the experience to do
we
it when
have
the time comes.
we can and we will.
Yeah.
Honestly, often once you get really close to commercialization, when you're in those last 6 months, even a year, the company really shifts to with large commercial teams, really a strong commercial focus. And at that point, it's full steam ahead. There's typically not a lot of oh, maybe, it's full steam.
Yeah.
So, that's a point where so far we're transitioning out. Now, that being said, you asked how we find clients. So starting out, it was people that we had worked with before, and we
Right.
still have some of that. The folks that we've worked with before knew us, loved the work we did, and so hey, we're consulting now. Do you have any work for us? So we started there with people we knew, and then we're very busy with that. And then got to a point where we realized that at some point, if we're going to continue to grow, we've got to reach out to some people that don't already know us.
Right.
So how do we do that? And we're a group of scientists. We're a group of PhDs and PharmDs and traditionally not strong in marketing.
No.
So we didn't, probably still don't really know what we're doing with marketing, but we have done some things that have worked, and we've done some things that haven't. So I feel like for us, the most impactful thing that we can do, that we have done, that's resulted in new business, is presenting to groups of potential clients at scientific meetings. So presenting the work that we've done, presenting case studies is impactful, and so that's been our best mode of getting new clients thus far. But then there's a whole ball of wax around that. Where do we go to do that? Who goes to do it? Should it be me? Should it be the lead of the medical team? Should it be someone else? What exactly should we present? And so we're still honing that. There's a lot of different meetings in biotech pharma. So which meetings are going to be the most fruitful? Calendars matter. So we'd really love to go to this meeting, but there's this other thing during that same week. So there's a lot of factors on deciding when and where to go.
Right.
And I think we have honed in on presentations to groups has been the most effective.
Great.
So far. Yeah. I think our biggest failure has been cold emails.
Right.
Our cold emails are just terrible ROI on those, and
they can be tough. Yeah, it's a long game with those.
Yeah. And I think the bulk of our customers are really, or our key demographic is really chief medical officers, CEOs, VPs of medical, and I think those folks probably get too many emails.
Yeah.
And then a cold email is just not at all welcome. So we're experimenting. We're trying to build our online presence, which is also slow. We're starting to do search engine optimization, which I think will be fruitful. And we probably should have started that a year ago.
But it's a long game too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been trying to define our digital strategy, and it has changed a lot from the outset. But I think right now probably if we were going to put two buckets, it would be Congress presentations on who we are and what we do, including case studies, and then search engine optimization. That's where we think we're going to get the most bang for our buck right now.
And when you deliver that presentation, are you finding people are surprised to hear that there's this structure available to them? Are they not suspicious, but are they kind of cautious about this, or do you find that people are extremely excited and want to learn more?
Yeah, I think the best feedback that we've gotten has really been, oh, that's a really good idea. I don't know why we're not doing that already. So I think honestly that's the most common feedback, and
that's
that
good
is
feedback.
The most welcome feedback. There are a lot of folks that just timing isn't quite right for them.
Right.
They're humming along smoothly, and then pharma can tend to be a big and slow beast. So we have a lot of folks who have said, contact me at this point, or I need to get through this first. I really like this idea. Call me at this point, or I'll call you at this point. And then we've we're doing very well in our niche, our rare, our neuro, our radio farm. And the double-edged sword there is, it's, you kind of want to lean into, this is what we're really good at and have the expertise in, but you also don't want to pigeonhole that
Right.
that's all we can do. So that's kind of a struggle of do we just embrace it and say, this is what we do? Or do we say, this is what we do, and we're going to kind of creep out into these nearby peripheral therapeutic areas?
Right.
So I'll touch base with you in a year and let you know how that's, how that's going.
Do you find that there's a certain point in the process, from ideation to market, where you feel it's your sweet spot? Like, where ideally, if you could choose your entry point in the transition, where would you like to put
Yeah, I
BioLogic?
think I like to be in between phase 2 and phase 3. I think that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
It's we know that the drug is relatively, you can't say until it's approved, but it's relatively safe,
Right.
and there is efficacy.
Right.
So then it's okay. How good does it work? Can we confirm that these results are real? And what's it going to take? How many patients is it going to take? And what study design is going to work for this, that we can show efficacy and we can do it in a reasonable amount of time? So there's some studies where endpoints can be really difficult, and the patient demographic changes quickly, and so it's hard to capture a fraction of time where you can show a meaningful impact and the patient isn't changing because of their disease state.
Right.
So there's all these really tricky factors that go into
Mm-hmm.
play. And then once you have phase 3 data, it's typically, okay, full speed,
The
commercial,
train's on the track. Yeah.
fast as we can.
Yeah.
So I think right now that's my favorite spot, phase 2 to 3.
And when you mentioned earlier too, when you get them to a certain point where it's like, okay, yeah, actually now we can actually start employing and filling some of these positions full time. You also help with that process too.
We
Oh,
do,
wow,
we do.
wow, that's kind of cool. So
Yeah,
you actually replace yourself. You find someone to replace you with, and then you exit and stage left, and out you go, and the train keeps moving. And
we do, and we even bring on people and ask them. We're very upfront when we bring on new consultants and employees. Do you want to do this just until you find a full time job or a permanent job? Are you just here temporarily? You just need a break, or do you want to stay here forever? Because some people we've hired some people part time, and they're just working on one project for one company, say 20 hours a week, and they love that therapeutic area. They have a lot of background and they want to do that, but maybe they don't want to work full time. And so we have some of those folks that have joined us part time with the option to join us full time. And we've had several people who have said, well, I want to work with you guys. I want to work with multiple different companies, and if I find the right company, I'll join them. And so we write into the contract, if you want to take one of our people, here's how it's going to work. But we want to give them the option. If it's a mutual attraction, and we have a consultant that we've put on a project and they love it and the company loves them, great. Enjoy your
cool.
lives together.
It's like a pharma dating service almost.
But sometimes you find a project that you're just really passionate
Yeah,
about,
for
and
sure.
you want to keep on. So, that's great.
That's great that door is open, because that just sort
Yeah,
of alleviates any kind of like, oh, I think I want to leave, but I don't want to leave on bad terms. That's really cool. That's a great approach, I think.
yeah. So, and I like giving people the freedom to have that transparency.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm probably not gonna stay with you guys forever. I'm shopping, or I'm trying to develop this skill set so that I can get into this next role.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
work on that together and get you there.
Those are win-win-wins. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's think about the future. What is ahead for you and the company and your team? If you could sort of like, you know, wave a wand and say, "Oh, in 5 years, I would like to see us here." Where is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I would like to see us in 5 years being the go-to medical affairs consulting firm for pre-commercial products. So for pharma and biotech to think, well, if I've got a product that I need to bring to commercial stage, it's BioLogic. They're the ones that are going to get us there. You know, I'd love for us to be that premier medical affairs consultancy. It'll be interesting to see how much post-commercial work we continue to do as the world becomes even more dynamic than it already is. I
Mm-hmm.
think that this model works out for a lot of companies beyond that pre-commercial space. So, I'd love to also be that for companies that need it. That hey, we want to try something new. We're going to bring you in and experiment. And if it works, if it doesn't work, we will have learned something. But there's a lot of utility for this, beyond that pre-commercial. But yeah, I would say in 5 years, BioLogic is the go-to firm for companies trying to bring a new drug to market. I'd like to see us in a number of different therapeutic areas and have additional support features that we don't have yet or are not strong in yet. So I'd like to be able to do more for the pre-commercial companies.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that, so to achieve that growth, what kind of approach would you take? Do you think? What would be? Are you? I mean, you're not geographically handcuffed. Like you guys, you can work with anybody, anywhere, basically, right? So,
yeah,
how would you? You know, is it a? How do you? Which road do you take for that growth?
yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a few ways we can get there, and again, it's about balance. You want to grow fast enough that you're continuing to succeed and make progress. You can't take on everything at once because you won't be good at it. You'll make too many missteps. So figuring out what is the best rate of growth is hard. And I don't know that you can even choose your own rate of growth
Right,
a whole lot. You
right,
know, I suppose you can turn down clients, who wants to do that?
right.
So,
That's a tough
um,
thing. That's as hard. That's as hard as firing people
yeah.
sometimes. You know.
But, you know, gosh, how do we get there? There's there's a couple different ways. So there's organic growth, continuing with what we're doing. There's also investment. So, we've been approached by a couple of investment firms who have other relationships and other companies, and we've considered that. The best pitch I've had yet from an investment firm was, we can get you to a larger place, bigger revenues, bigger size, a whole lot faster than you could get alone.
Right.
And so that's interesting to think. We have this somewhat positive progression over time, and
Mm.
instead of just taking this progression, we could jump,
Yep.
to that level. That's
Quantum leap.
Yeah, that's attractive and scary
Yeah.
and exciting.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then there's also mergers and acquisitions.
Hmm.
So, I've lived that a few times, where you're in a company and there's significant M&A activity, and that in itself is challenging,
Hmm.
but it is also a great strategy for growth. So that's a possibility. Could we merge? Could we acquire another company that has some of these? I mentioned these peripheral skills that I would like us to develop. One way to get those peripheral skills, instead of slowly developing them over time, is potentially acquiring a company that already has all those skills.
Right.
And then,
Yeah, that's viable.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so we're exploring some of those things and trying to make those decisions. And in the interim, we're continuing to plug along and think about it with investment firms. I feel like they are ready to go. They let's make a deal, let's get going.
Yeah.
And I'm very much like, let's date. Let's talk about it for a while. I don't know.
Where's the wine?
Yeah. So, and right now I continue to feel really good about that approach because it's a big decision.
Yeah.
It's a lot of change, and you want to get that right. It's there was a guy at Kennesaw State, one of my professors once, and he said, when you're doing business with people, when you're merging two businesses together, it's not like a marriage where you can just get divorced. It's a much bigger commitment. So I do think a significant measure of pause and caution is warranted in those decisions. So
I agree.
Not in any hurry, but interested, I think, is where we are right now.
Open.
It's fun to think about. Yeah. But in the interim, we're still going to continue to grow.
For sure.
Who knows?
It's the world is your entrepreneurial oyster right now, I think, because you are helping to manage flux and change. So, and that's definitely a place where most of the world is at right now. So, if you're able to help people through tremendous change and bridge some of those gaps where they get them from where they are now to where they want to be, I mean, that's a pretty incredible place to be, and a pretty cool offer for someone in need of those services. So yeah. Any last thoughts you want to throw out there? Anything we didn't cover you'd like to capture before we say goodbye? I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I really appreciate you sharing your journey as an entrepreneur and where you've come. But yeah, any last thoughts or?
No, I can't think of anything. I also, Heath, have very much enjoyed the conversation. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to reflect on the journey. It's been good. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It is important to reflect and to remember where we came from, and also to remember our struggles, so that you don't want to repeat them, but sometimes it's where our biggest learnings come from. So
I think so too.
Yeah, it's like, well, thank you for sharing with us, and we'll do it again. I can't wait to hear where you're going to be in the next couple of years. So we'll talk again.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. That was an awesome conversation. Really enjoyed talking to Mary about how she embraced her entrepreneurial spirit and forged ahead to start her own consultancy firm. Even after having a fail in the process, it's just something you got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get back in the game. Her approach is very strategic, very methodical, but also she likes to follow her heart, and she has obviously embraced that value of looking after her team, and she also keeps that same insight into looking after her clients and helping them achieve their goals, where they can be scientists and not have to be distracted with the grind of running a business, which can kind of get in the way, but also help guide people to stay focused and learn how to trust others in helping them reach the finish line. And I want to thank you again for listening to The Healthy Enterprise, and we'll talk again soon. Have a great day.